I'm Joan Warner. I'm the CEO of Commercial Radio in Australia, which is the industry body representing all commercial radio across the country. And we're very glad to be here today to talk about radio and how it's weathered the worldwide pandemic, and what are some of the issues and challenges for radio broadcasters, both what were they during the pandemic and what are they coming out of the pandemic. We would love to have been there in person at the ABU conference, but sadly we can't be because of the pandemic. So I'm here today with Grant Blackley, who is the chairman of CRA, but also the CEO of our biggest commercial radio network and also has a large regional commercial TV network. Grant runs AM, FM and DAB Plus stations in both metropolitan areas and across our regional centres. So welcome, Grant. It's great to have you.
Thank you.
Okay, well, let's start by going back to March. Coincidentally, given we've just come through Friday the 13th, it was Friday the 13th, and the World Health Organization had officially declared a global pandemic. Now, the previous day, our own government had issued travel bans and bans on mass gatherings throughout the country. Now, you sitting there as one of Australia's biggest and most successful radio networks, with an audience of 7.4 million across the country, what was going through your mind? What was uppermost in your mind in terms of how does radio need to respond to this very, very real global crisis?
Joan, I think there were two things on my mind, on our board and our management's mind. The first thing was to obviously act in a very considered and calm manner. And first and foremost, to make sure that we communicated with all key stakeholders, both internally and externally. We employ 2,000 people in 65 offices, and effectively they were hearing the news as we were hearing the news. So our communication was often, it was open, it was honest. In relation to our external parties, from measurement, clients, advertisers, and agencies, we had to move from what was a steady state of operating into a different state. So communication was the first thing. I think technology was the second thing. And thankfully we had invested in a technology platform over the last couple of years in preparation for an event that could occur that had never occurred. And when we've got 99 radio stations with 99 breakfast shows, we had to seamlessly move that from in-office to at home, and recognising there could be 3 to 4 influencers to every one of those shows. We had to set up and effectively within a 48-hour period, when we decided, transition those 99 breakfast shows from in studio to at home, but multiple homes. Thankfully, the technology platform survived extremely well because of the work that we'd done, but technology was our friend and continues to be our friend, and I think will help us accelerate out of COVID in the right way. The third thing was that we knew that people weren't travelling as much as they were. They were being told to stay at home, and effectively there would be a changing requirement for what they got from what is an essential service, being radio. And radio, people tune in at times of crisis as much as times of entertainment. And in times of crisis, we are available on multiple platforms through multiple devices with inherently live local updates and national updates. And that was critical that we maintain that voice for the government and for the health officers and fundamentally for our own businesses, so that we informed communities. So we knew that there would be a change in the way in which people consumed radio and generally information, but we also knew we played a pivotal role in that ecosystem.
And of course, we did a survey here in Australia that showed that radio listening went up during the pandemic, and while people were in lockdown, and while we lost some listening in cars, we gained it in the home.
Yes.
All of that said, many businesses took a hit and had to restructure quite drastically. Mm-hmm. And I think the media sector was probably not the hardest hit. Every sector would say they were the hardest hit, but certainly one of the hardest as our advertisers shut down. So how do you think the Australian industry, and I think you've touched on it a little bit, has been hit and has responded in terms of restructure?
The way in which we looked at it was we had to effectively suspend surveys because of the way in which we measure. We had to then comfort the market and educate the market as to what could supplement a normal data stream to ensure that there was a considered reporting model that we could rely upon that would provide consistent updates on the way through. We also needed to understand exactly how our constituents were wanting to work with us, and everyone was slightly different. So we had to manufacture nearly a bespoke model as to how we would talk with our community and how we would fundamentally talk to our advertisers. The advertising market, as we went into this, we put into three buckets. The first bucket was that 20% of advertisers stopped advertising. They couldn't advertise. Airports, live performances and related. There was a body of probably another 40% in the middle, which was the majority of large advertisers that fundamentally spent less and substantially less. And then there was 20% of our client base that effectively spent more. And that was government, it was telcos providing information about the services they provide. On aggregate, we saw a deep, dark hole that appeared very quickly in the space of probably 2 weeks. And we saw an enormous amount of money leave the market of media and leave radio as well. The unfortunate advent with radio was that there was a misconception in the marketplace, and the misconception was if you're not in your car listening to radio, you actually can't get radio. And in actual fact, that's not true, because radio is many facets. Part of the ecosystem is, yes, one-to-many with FM and AM. It is also live streaming across multiple devices, from mobiles, desktop, smart speakers and related. So unfortunately, a lot of agencies and clients assumed a position that if we weren't in our cars, we couldn't connect with radio. And that was fundamentally wrong. As you rightly put forward, in fact, on a weekly basis, listening went up by 1 hour and 46 minutes on average, and therefore it changed. Breakfast changed as well. People slept in. It's a human behaviour. People slept in, but their breakfast was extended. So we started to extend our formats to meet that growing need. Daytime went up. So daytime went up because they were working from home. They were effectively lonely, disconnected, and they needed information. There was also a growing thirst and information for information and updates. So we saw talk networks move up in terms of desire and popularity, and some of the entertainment formats went down. But over a number of weeks, that started to balance out, where people said, I've seen and heard enough information, I actually need to do something else. And I need, purely for mental health, I think, to fundamentally balance the way in which I get it. So everything was changing all at once. And as I said earlier, it was about being calm and considered in every aspect of our business, most importantly our content teams, to make sure they remained live, relevant and essential to people in the way in which they wish to engage with us.
Yeah, and I think that's something that radio does really well, because we've got that personal connection, which really no other media can replicate. Entirely. So again, that plays to the strength and localism
entirely
of radio. But just probably nearly in closing, you did mention revenue, and yes, of course all media sectors and many other sectors experienced revenue drops. Looking into your crystal ball, what do you see might be the speed of recovery for commercial radio? Mm-hmm. And many of the people that will be dialing into this are commercial radio operators or are running public service broadcasters who take advertising.
Yes.
So what in your crystal ball do you see as speed of recovery, quantum of recovery? Is 2021 just going to be business as usual?
Okay, I think there's a few things we have to take account of. One, Australia is in a relatively privileged position. We have been able to control this pandemic very well. There are small outbreaks, but we have just gone through a 9-day period of no new COVID cases and transmissions. So that's providing confidence to the market and to consumers to go about their daily life. Now, there will continue to be outbursts in certain cases, which hopefully can be controlled. The second thing is that, we're now seeing multiple vaccines being reported as, up in the 95% success ratios. So all of a sudden people are saying there is an end to this crisis. The third thing was that the government provided enormous stimulus. to business and to the consumer, to let them ride through these issues and fundamentally come out of it economically and personally, at least on a par, if not better. And that stimulus must end at some point. So looking into the crystal ball, we have to see that as the backdrop. But looking into the crystal ball, our organisation and the industry were broadly down 45% in the first quarter. In the second quarter, it got a lot better. And month by month, we were getting about 10% better. We are now at a stage where we're seeing across the sector national growth, but we're not seeing local growth. So we're seeing national advertisers lean back into the market. They have been absent from the market for too long and they want to lean forward and invest. Product is now coming onto our shores and they're servicing consumer demand. At a local level, it's slightly different. There is still a level of nervousness that the market and the economy won't return to the same level. So they're holding back. In some cases, they're actually having the greatest success they've ever had because they're small businesses, they're operating, they're in high demand and they don't have to advertise. So we're balancing that and it depends on what proportion of your revenue is national and local. But we're seeing more than green shoots. We're seeing small shrubs and we're watering those shrubs to get us back to a level of normality. And I'm hopeful that as we hit early in the new year, I don't think we're going to see it between now and Christmas because we don't have long to go. But there is increasing optimism and improvement in both the health and economic factors. And I do feel that coming into 2021, we'll see a level of normality respecting the health crisis does dissipate. And I think we'll see a return and renewed vigour back into investing back in the market to build brands and stimulate sales for those people. And I think that all goes well. So I do see 2021 hopefully as returning to a state of normality. That said, normality will be different post-COVID than pre-COVID in a range of ways.
Okay, so finally, because our time's up,
yes.
In maybe 10 words, what's the one biggest challenge that commercial radio is facing in 2021?
The biggest challenge is, firstly, measurement. There's been a changing shape of the way consumers, I can't do it in 10 words, by the way.
But maybe 50.
In 50. But what we've got is the consumer has changed the way they associate and consume audio and radio. And it's live streaming, it is FM, DAB, it is AM, it is catch-up radio, it is premium on-demand content. All of that has changed. So we have to measure each of those attributes because if we don't measure it, we can't sell it. So that's the first thing. The second thing is that we actually have to embrace digital platforms. And in embracing digital platforms, we are embracing smart speakers and, through Google or Amazon, we're creating partnerships as an industry and we're becoming more prolific in what we do. And I think that's an accolade as well. We have to continue to actually look at technology as a friend more broadly. We have to lean into that to make ourselves more effective and efficient, whilst at the same time investing more in content to meet the consumer needs so that the audio pot grows. So if you look at those three things, if we can do that in unison, I think we're going to have a very healthy state for audio, a growing state for audio. And I think, the participants that lean into that, organise that content and really bring it into nearly a single ecosystem for the consumer in a scaled and simplistic manner will win.
Yes. And on that optimistic note, I'd like to say thank you, Grant Blackley. Very, very busy, of course, as all of our viewers will be. But thank you for that. Some really good insights. And we hope you have a good conference. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.